Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure, is sponsored by SJ&L General Contractors. They are licensed in both Alabama and Tennessee, and they provide services such as mass grading, storm drainage, sewer and concrete improvement, asphalt paving, erosion control, demolition, and heavy hauling. If you need any of these services, contact them 931-433-4660, 931-433-4660. Also, they are in need of heavy equipment operators, concrete finishers, CDL dump truck drivers, and pipe layers. If you're interested in employment with this family-owned business, you can go to the website www.sjnl.com. That's www.sjnl.com. To quote Ray Stevens, nervous? What could possibly make me nervous? The trust fall makes me nervous. You see, of all the elements on a ropes course, and ropes courses essentially have three phases. We do things called initiative games. Those are games that you play with light props or out in a field or on an open gym floor. And then you have low elements. Low elements are everything under 8 feet, and they are fixed elements where you have obstacles to cross or problems to solve. And then you have high elements, and a high element is anything that involves the participant being roped off, being attached to a belay line or some kind of a safety system. The trust fall is neither a high element nor a low element. You see, when a person climbs up on a trust fall and assumes the vulnerable position and falls back into their group, if the group doesn't catch them, there will be serious injury. Anybody from that height who falls back into the arms of other people should probably be wearing a rope, should probably have some kind of a suspension system or a fall arrest system on them. But if you do that, you take away the purity of the element. The element in and of itself has to have some inherent risk. I have been dropped on a trust fall. We were up on the Old Keel Mountain course, and I was working with a group of executives, I think from a bank. Normally, our warm-up exercises involve some trust leans. We do a thing that we used to call willow in the wind, where a group picks up a participant and carries them around a little bit. And in the old days, we would do all the activities with our groups. For whatever reason, I was not picked up by this group. And as we were doing the trust fall, the people went through the trust fall protocol. And as we normally did, it was, hey, if we ask you to trust us, then we'll trust you. So I climbed up on the little platform and set my feet and folded my hands and said, spotters ready. And the group replied, ready. And I said, I'm falling on 3. And they said, fall on 3. And I leaned back, and somewhere in the estimation of me as a person, you can look at my height and not really notice my width and not realize that they've packed 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound sack. I'm a thick little person. I can remember Jim Goins, the first time he grabbed me goofing around with SWAT, said, hey, you better mean it when you put your hands on the preacher. He said, it's like grabbing a stump. Well, I fell into this group of executives, and they were unprepared for my mass, and I blew through their arms. Instinctively, I reached out and tried to grab clothing or people or heads because I was already well inverted. The other lead instructor on the course that day, Lisa Carper, slid under my head and caught my back of my head on her thigh and kept me from crashing into the ground. I was inverted enough that change came out of my pocket. Had Lisa not been there, I probably would have broken my neck. And these people did not estimate properly my size And although they had my feet up in the air, my head was below my feet, and they would have dropped me. Yeah, the trust fall makes me nervous. It can't be roped, because if you use ropes on people while they're doing a trust fall, then you lose the purity of the element. But if you don't do it, it really is the only place, barring some negligent act on an instructor's part, or some act of absolute disobedience on a participant's parts, or some act of God, freak of nature, equipment failure kind of thing. It really is the only place on a ropes course you can get hurt. I remember that they wanted to start a signature program for the Coca-Cola company. It was going to be called Camp Coca-Cola. They took over a camp. I think they took over a Girl Scout camp. Maybe it was Camp Juliet Low. It might have been different than that. But they wanted to do a signature program, bring children from Atlanta, and you had to have a application. You had to have a letter of recommendation from your school and maybe a minister. And these children would come to this camp for a summer. And then the next summer, they would take the original group of campers and divide them in half. And Group A would mentor a new group of students. Group B would mentor a new group of students. And they would have this summer-long experience with these campers, somewhere between the 5th and the 7th grades, I think. And Coca-Cola, as a company, threw money at this thing. They took this Girl Scout camp and they wired it for Wi-Fi, and they hired a bunch of consultants, and they bought enough equipment so the children could go on overnights. They could leave the camp and maybe raft the little river up there in Mentone, and then spend the night on the banks. And it was a really elaborate thing. And Coke wanted this to be their signature project, kind of like the Ronald McDonald houses. And I got contacted. To be the lead instructor for their ropes course that summer. Well, my schedule did not allow me to stay at camp all summer. I've got other things I do for work. And so I made it a deal that this day of every week would be ropes course day. And I would drive over from Huntsville to Camp Juliet Low, right outside of Mentone, and facilitate both the low elements and the high elements as a series of progressed events. And I remember being with my little group of students and teaching them about the trust fall. Now, the big element on the trust fall is you've got to have your spotters line. You've got 2 lines of people facing each other, and their palms are up, their arms are down, and every other hand is in. We call it a zipper line. And then you have an instructor at the head of the line who stands between the people. So if something happens, you rush in and catch the head and the shoulders, like Lisa did when she saved if not my life, at least my mobility. And so the students practice that, and then we put a student on the platform, and they either hold the sides of their pants, or they do this thing that we call wrapped up, tied up, tangled up. It's just like the hand motions you do in Vacation Bible School. And what that does is it prevents a person from flinging their arms out to the side and damaging the people who are trying to catch them. You see, on a trust fall, once you start to lean back, there's a point, a breaking point, a tipping point, that once you get to that point, you can't undo this thing. It is going to come to its natural conclusion. You started this ride, and the ride can't be stopped. It reminds me of an old proverb that says, like an arrow shot from a bow, words cannot be recalled. Once you turn that string loose on that bow, that arrow is going to go the direction you pointed. The same thing with your words. And so sometimes there's a startle reflex. The only fear you're born with naturally is the fear of falling backwards, or the fear of loud noises. So you have to overcome an innate fear and fall backwards, and not let your hands fly out to try to self-arrest or try to catch you. And we did some trust leans and things practicing. And so I've got this group of students, and we've got this little platform that they climb up these little steps and stand on it, and they get in their faller's position. And I'm working with these students, and I can see through the pines, this little camp in Georgia. I see several gentlemen in suits. These are guys from corporate. These are guys from Coke in Atlanta. This is the brass. These are your CEOs. These are the guys who have envisioned this program but don't have any boots on the ground. They're out here in the Georgia heat in their suits, and I'm out here in a pair of camouflage cargo pants and a T-shirt with some kind of weird logo on it, and this madman is out here in the woods with these kids. And so we get this little trust fall set up, and the guys from Atlanta are walking toward us, the suits from corporate, and this little guy. Spotters ready. Spotters are ready. I'm falling on 3, fall on 3. And he leans back. And as he breaks that plane where, okay, this is it. You're going to fall. There's no way to keep yourself from falling. He flails his arms out. And his elbow catches this kid in the nose. And I mean, he jacks him. It is, you can hear the pop. And there's blood flowing. And they caught the little guy. And now I'm surrounded by dudes in suits. Probably one of them's got to be a lawyer. This is your worst nightmare. And so we're trying to put this thing together, make sure who's bleeding and who's not and who's all right. And this little young man, he had some Asiatic features to him. His little glasses are canked sideways and they're cracked and broken. I believe his nose was broke too. He's got blood streaming down his face, and I'm trying to find some kind of a teaching point here, but I was frustrated. And I said, well, why didn't you just move when he slung his elbow at you? And the young man replied, because I promised to stand here regardless of what he did. One of those profound statements you hear from the mouth of a child. One of those things that stops you in your tracks. You see, I made a commitment. I said I was going to stand here, and I was going to have my arms out, and when he fell off this platform, I was going to catch him. And that promise was not contingent on if he was easy to catch or hard to catch, if he was convenient to catch, or if in the process of catching him, I hurt myself or he hurt me. The simple elegance of a child's words, because I promised to stand here, and it didn't matter what he did. That is the day that I stopped debriefing the trust fall. Now, when we debrief one of our elements, we talk about facts. Facts lead to concepts. Concepts lead to applications. And we talk about, there are some things here that once you start this process, once you start lying, you've got to keep lying or you've got to come to the truth. Once you violate certain promises, you've ended a relationship. There's a risk that once you start using this substance or looking at these images, there's all kinds of things that you talk about that the trust fall illustrates. The other thing that we used to talk about is who do you trust? I remember a heartbreaking story of a young man. First young man I ever gave a rope to. I climbed with a lot of people, but had never trusted anybody else with their own equipment. And this young man had my original assault rope, my black tactical rope. It was kind of a mythical rope. It was the black rope. It was cool. Had some SWAT stuff associated with it. And I remember him telling me, well, I lost the black rope. And he was like, well, how did you lose the black rope? He said, I was in a cave with these guys and I put the rope up on a shelf and it fell off the shelf and into the water. And had I been with people I trusted, I'd have gone in the water and got it. And my question was, what were you doing underground with people you didn't trust? If you would not stand on this platform and fall back into these people's arms, why are you in a car with them? Why are you in a boat with them? Why are you dating them? Why are you in business with them? Why are you in church with them? Why are you in any relationship with anybody that you don't trust? And that's how we used to talk about the trust fall of putting a filter up and putting a barrier up around our lives and who we deal with and who we trust. But on this day, when the little kid with the broken glasses and the bleeding nose says, I promise to stand here regardless of what he did, I changed the way that I debrief the trust fall. Because the trust fall is not about, do I trust you? But the trust fall is about, can I be trusted? Am I a person of integrity that when you put yourself at risk and I've made a commitment to you, will I stand there for you? Will I do what I promised to do regardless of what you did? Because your behavior is never permission for my behavior to change. If we're in a committed relationship, if there's been a promise exchanged, if there's been a vow made, I promised to stand here, and it didn't matter what you chose to do. That's a powerful statement. The idea that I can be vulnerable and I can trust you. So the point of the trust fall for me quit being, can I trust you people? But the point of the trust fall became, can I be trusted? Will I be the person to stand my ground and take my place, regardless of what your actions, because your actions don't give me permission to break my promise. Your actions don't give me the release to not fulfill my vow. I promise to stand here regardless of what he chose to do. When we talk to leadership groups, or we talk to at-risk groups, it's very interesting that if we do some kind of a trust fall type thing, whether it's just trust leans or whether it's an actual trust fall, you can ask this question. What makes you more nervous? Catching people or being caught? The at-risk groups, the people who are struggling with success in life, almost to the person will say, it makes me more nervous to be vulnerable around you. I don't want you to let me down. I don't want you to disappoint me. I don't want you to drop me. And it's probably because people who are at risk have been traumatized. People who are at risk have been hurt. People who are at risk would have a high score on the adverse childhood experiences scale. People who say, I have trouble trusting other people. And that's because other people have hurt them. Other people have dropped them. Other people have let them down. And the leadership groups, the military groups, the cops, the people who are leaders, when we ask them, hey, does it make you more nervous to be caught or to catch? They always to the person almost, unless there's a real phobia. But people who aren't dealing with a phobia will look you in the eye and go, it makes me more nervous to be worried about letting somebody else down than somebody letting me down. They're way more worried about, am I doing my job rather than worrying about whether or not you're doing your job. The point of the trust fall for me is not, can I trust you? But can I be trusted? In all things, with all things, and in every situation. I am fortunate that my life is full of people that I can trust. I can't tell you how blessed I am to have friends like that. But it is way more important to me than to have friends like that is to be a friend like that. I'm glad that I have people in my life who I can trust. But it is way more important for me to be a person who can be trusted. This year, on June 20th, we're going to launch a special edition of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. It'll be a special anthology called The Dad Files. It's 52 very short, very brief discussions of some of the things that I wrote about and the things I learned just being a dad. I found all the old articles that I wrote about Lonnie Beth, from the time that we found out she was coming into the world to a few things that I wrote about in being a grandfather and being able to play with her children. We'll be launching this in small blocks. The whole thing will come out at one time, but they'll be in sections. I think maybe the longest one might be 7 or 8 minutes long, but it would give you a weekly look at some daily dad devotionals, or maybe even just some things that are linked to being a parent, some observations from my life as a young father all the way up to being a grandfather, and invite you, If you're interested in some extra bonus material, check us out when we launch the Dad Files on Father's Day. Should you be interested in sponsoring the Dad Files, you can email me, Lon Jones, LONJONES, at bellsouth.net, or just send me a message on Facebook. And if you're interested in sponsoring the Dad Files, we'll talk about what that involves. And again, we thank you for keeping up with Jones. There are 32 miles of cave passages in Cumberland Cavern. 333 feet underground is the Volcano Room. The Volcano Room is the site for the youth rally known as Erupt. It's an underground youth rally. It's an annual event. It takes place in October. The next Erupt is scheduled for October of 2021. Erupt is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. If you'd like more information, you may contact them at eruptyouithrally@gmail.com. That's eruptyouithrally@gmail.com. Or check out their website for more information, 3 W's and a dot, eruptyouithrally.com, www.eruptyouithrally.com. Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to the city of Huntsville in 1986 for me to be a youth and family minister. I have been a minister since 1980. I have served in this community as a police chaplain assigned to a SWAT team since 1992, and I've been in private practice as a licensed professional counselor since 1998. I'm also an adventure educator and an avid outdoorsman. I dabble in rock climbing and I goof around with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our life has been full of many wonderful experiences and some just outright adventures. I used to write about those things in a little church bulletin article. So now instead of asking you to read those things, we're just going to talk about them in our podcast. And as we talk about them, we're going to talk about the facts. The facts lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. One caveat about the facts is, for the most part, we're going to tell you the facts just as they happened. But every now and then, we're going to tell you the way other people have told us they remember it happening, with a little bit of embellishment. It's all good, clean fun and for educational purposes. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy Keeping Up with Jones.